Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. I'm the Reverend Natalie Fenimore, and along with the Reverends Paul Johnson, Jennifer Brower, and our ministerial intern, Oscar Sinclair, I serve this congregation as minister. That means I am part of ministry and not all of it. We minister to, with, and for one another. We are joined in this community of faith. We are also joined in this great adventure of fire drills together. I hope everyone noticed how we helped one another to leave the building. I hope everyone noticed that we were all invested in making sure that no one was left alone or behind. I hope you all noticed that people cared for the littlest of us who were outside, maybe a little bit too enthusiastic and not paying attention to the fire trucks coming. I hope you all noticed that we waited outside and we waited together. And so we have had our Greet Your Neighbor this morning. Inside your order of service, you will see an insert of many, many things. We are a lively and vital congregation with activities and programs and events for everyone of all ages and stages of life, of all interests. I invite you to find something that speaks to your mind, your heart, your spirit through this week, and come and be with us. We are not a Sunday morning only group. We're here all the time, day and night. Some of you, I think, sleep here, actually. I invite you to work your way up to sleeping here. I'd like to call special attention to the programs and events today. The second graders will be having their bridging rehearsal after the service here in the worship room. We'll also have an end-of-life planning seminar at 1 o'clock in the art gallery, which is right behind the worship room. We're also going to have a General Assembly orientation meeting for all attendees, delegates, and non-delegates who will be coming to General Assembly. General Assembly, if you don't know, is our annual gathering of Unitarian Universalists from across the country and around the world. We come together to talk about our faith, to plan in the future. As you know, our faith is at its core democratic, and each and every Unitarian Universalist has an opportunity to attend General Assembly and to vote, to be part of the conversation and discussion about the future of our faith. So I invite you all to consider coming to General Assembly at some time. It's a wonderful experience. And it's also open to our teens, so please consider it as well. Today, there's also going to be a book sale for the Common Read, which is a reading, one book that all Unitarian Universalist congregations are invited to engage with for the year, and that book is Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Brian Stevenson. It'll be available for sale in the lobby. So, as we have already done our Greet Your Neighbor, we will now have our prelude.
As we begin our time of worship together this morning and continuing to celebrate the ministry of the Reverend Paul Johnson here at Shelter Rock, let's begin with words that we heard last night at a party that many of us were at. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and the realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow only a vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. And as we do at the beginning of our time together every week, we join together in lighting the flaming chalice, the symbol of our faith. And this week we'll invite Margarita and Joseph Gonzalez to come forward and light our chalice as we recite the words written in our order of service. We light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. This is a faith of the open minds. This is a faith of loving hands. This is a faith of helping hands. Together we take care of our earth and work for peace and friendship in our world. And will you please rise as you are comfortable and join me in singing our opening hymn this morning, number 1000 in the Teal hymnal, Morning Has Come. And if you are in the balcony, if you reach behind you, you can find extra Teal hymnals. If you will remain standing and recite with me the words of affirmation printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need. This do we affirm and covenant with one another.
Many years ago now, I had saved up in my first professional job in order to take a trip to Europe, and I went to Europe with my friend Bob. Bob's twin brother Dick is here. Why don't you stand so they can... He's from Minnesota. And Dick joined Bob and I when we got around to Switzerland and Germany. So you're part of this story in a way too. But Bob and I, we landed in England and then went to the Netherlands and picked up a car and drove to Belgium and then to France. Of course, we went to Paris. But we wanted to go to Avignon. No, at one point in Roman Catholic history, there were two popes, one in Rome and one in Avignon. So we wanted to see the palace of the popes. But we got lost. So we were trying to figure it out, and I said, well, let's ask that Frenchman over there. So in my rather halting French, I said, Où est Palais du Pape? How is that, you French speakers? Is that understandable? Where is the palace of the popes? The guy looked at me and he said, American? And I said, oui. And he spit right down on my shoes and stomped off. Well, we kind of forgot about the Palais du Pape for a little bit. We said, let's get some limonada, lemonade. So I went to a lemonade stand and got some lemonade, and there was no place to sit by the stand, so we sat on somebody's steps across the street. The owner came out, and he said to us, American? What were we going to do? Kind of, we? He says, oh, I love Americans. And he invited us back to his patio, and he brought out some drinks, and then he brought out pictures which showed him as a young boy. He said, I was raised in an orphanage supported by Americans. That's me in the picture. You see that? These are Americans. And we had a wonderful visit. And what a lesson that was to me against prejudgment. One Frenchman treated us terribly, and the other was so gracious. You never really can prejudge people. You've got to keep an openness. And that's been true with all my life. When my family moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin, when I was 9 years old, there was a boy 1 year younger than I living across the alley by the name of William. We call him Dodie. And early when I was there one day, I was over in his house. We were playing in the backyard. And he said, my church, he was Roman Catholic, was founded by Jesus Christ. And I was a Protestant, and he said, your church was founded by a renegade Catholic priest who wanted to marry a nun, so he left the priesthood in the church. My church is the true church. And I disagreed. I said, we believe in Jesus Christ too. He started our church too. My father is a real minister. And we started to fight. And we were down in the dirt and fighting. And his mother finally came out and I'll put the fight to rest, kind of admonished us both. But my feelings for Dodie were rather dim at that point. I didn't know if I was going to have much to do with him. But over time, we began to drift across the alley into each other's yards. And before long, my initial estimate of him changed to a very good friend. And I remember all the good times I had in his house with his brothers and sisters and mother and father and grandmother. And, I remember, I don't know if kids do this anymore, but I'd go over and I'd say, I wouldn't knock on the door or ring the doorbell. I'd say, Dodie, Dodie. And he'd come out. We had some great times together. But it's true in so many areas about prejudgments. There was in my one of my congregations, there was a girl in my coming-of-age class who was so shy. She could not get up the gumption to even come to class some Sundays. And I have to send the lesson to her home where she would work on it. When Affirmation Sunday came and she was to give her credo in front of the congregation, she didn't have the courage to read it. Someone else had to read it for her. And so for many years, I had in my mind this image of a very shy, retiring. And I often wondered, how is this girl going to make it in life? And I went back to that congregation many years later. She had matured into a self-confident person who had become a leader in the congregation, who could speak at ease in front of everybody. Life goes, grows, and flows. People change. They don't necessarily conform to our judgments. I remember in another congregation, there was a fellow who was the severest critic of my preaching in the congregation. He said, "Paul, you tell too many stories. You're not academic enough. You don't have enough footnotes." I said, "Well, I don't know if people come to church to hear a lecture. Well, I think you ought to do some more." So I tried some sermon on postmodernism and quantum physics and process theology, and I got a letter from him. He says, keep it up. But of course, other people, no, that wasn't too helpful to them. But he would come every Sunday, and I knew how disappointed he was. He didn't ever crack a smile. He'd kind of sit there, and I'd say, "Boy, I'm disappointing him again this Sunday. I wonder why he comes back every Sunday." I left that congregation, came back a few years later, and with a tear in his voice, he gave me the warmest handshake and said, "We miss you so much. You could have knocked me over with a feather. You could have knocked me over with a feather." I had judged him as a severe critic, but yet deep within his heart, there was that appreciation and love. May it be a lesson to all of us to have restraint in judgment. People sometimes disappoint us on the downside, but so often they surprise us on the upside. Let's be open to that surprise and celebrate it. So may it be with all of us.
We'll now sing our children and their teachers to their religious education classes.
At least twice a year, we have formal welcome of new members who have joined us recently, and we're pleased to have such a ceremony today. And to take part in the ceremony, I'm going to ask first Martha Camiente, the chair of our membership committee, to come forward, and then just a bit later, Arnold Babel, our president.
Good morning. As the chair of the membership committee, it is my joy to welcome those who have decided to join our congregation and thus draw more deeply from the wells of this community of faith, and who will influence the health and direction of this congregation by participating in its ministries, leadership, and decision-making. We welcome the vision and energy and spiritual searching of our newest members. I now ask that our new members come forward as their names are read. Please bring with you your order of service. Marvin Brown, Carol Canova, Peter Canova, D. Grace Davy, Alice Giordano, Margarita Gonzalez, Bernard Hall, Diane Haney, Nancy Keegan, Tina Menko Mitchell, Stella Sarapata, Debbie Siegel.
Arnold, can you join us?
Before I go through the formal welcome, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the journey that my wife and I have taken and that we feel and hope that you will take. 9 years ago, when we first came to this congregation, most of our family had passed by that time. They were significantly older than us. What we did not know at that time, and what we hope you will come to know, is that we found a whole new family. This has become our extended family. This is where, when we turn into the driveway on Sundays or on any other day, this is where all of a sudden a deep emotion comes over us. All the problems that we all experience in life suddenly are left at the gate. We feel a feeling of warmth, of relaxation, of welcome. this is where we have developed new friends, new interests, and a place we have come to love very deeply. Now, our congregation has been shaped by generations of women and men who have given generously of their hopes and dreams, their energy and their resources. They sought to build a community of faith in which all will be welcomed and appreciated, and where all may find a center for inspiration, growth, and service. Some who were present at the beginning of our congregation's journey are no longer with us. Yet their influence endures, and on such days as today, we remember them with deep appreciation. Because of their vision and their labor, which we carry forward, our circle grows and our influence for good in the lives of individuals, families, and in the wider world expands. We welcome you into this community of worship and fellowship with hope for a long and ever-deepening relationship.
I invite our new members to read with me the new member affirmation as found in the order of service. So let's begin. We enter into membership in this congregation freely and gladly with an understanding of the Unitarian Universalist faith and of the responsibilities appropriate to membership in this community. We are ready to join with you on a common spiritual journey and willing to add our portion, great or small, to the Unitarian Universalist tradition. And now, in honor of our new members, I ask you to rise as you're able as we give our response. We welcome you to this congregation to share our dreams and to join our strength and wisdom with ours as we create the future together. We pledge to you an openness of heart and mind and a willingness to grow with you in spirit, in understanding, and in fellowship. You may be seated. And now, Jennifer, Natalie, Oscar, and I will shake hands on behalf of you all with these folks, and also Martha, if she wants to stay. But then we invite all of you to be sure to do this after the service this morning as you're able, and warm welcome of these folks who have joined us.
We eat from fields we have not planted, and we drink from wells we have not dug. And this is acceptable, so long as each in our own way we contribute to the health and the well-being of the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. This congregation feeds us, nourishes us, helps us to thrive. May we be generous in sharing our gifts with this congregation so that we can reach out to others who have yet to find us even. This morning's offering will now be greatly received, generously given, and gratefully appreciated. Would the ushers please come forward? as we prepare to join with Paul in reflecting upon the past 14 years, I share with you the words of the Reverend Richard Gilbert. His work, Life is Always Unfinished Business. In the midst of the whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, in the frantic pace of life, pause here for a moment. Catch your breath. Relax your body. Loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow yourself to be a work in progress. Do not hurry the mold. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in process. There's always more to be done. Today, do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete. For life is always unfinished business.
Well, Stephen has pulled out all the stops on the music today, hasn't he? Yes. With the choir and our jazz ensemble and our accompanist, of course, by drums and bass, and Judith Hancock on the organ, and our youth choir. Oh, my God. How will I be able to make it without that music? It's just been so wonderful. I realized that our service got started late, that we had welcomed new members, and I wanted to have a story for all ages on this Sunday. So if you have to leave because of other appointments or you need a bio break, feel free. But I hope you'll indulge me a little bit on this particular Sunday. Back in the fall of 2001, I was sitting in my office at the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Princeton, and I got a call from the head of the search committee here, Jean Judd, and she said, our search committee for senior minister would like to interview, talk with you. Well, I hadn't been planning on moving, but that was very intriguing. I had an interest in the congregation since 1984 when I met David Osborne, the then minister, while I was in Japan for the IRF conference, and learned a lot about the congregation. And so an interview never hurts, right? So I said, sure, and we exchanged materials. I had an interview, and they eventually chose me as a candidate to present to the congregation. Now, I must say, when this became known, I was contacted by many ministerial colleagues who said, Paul, are you out of your mind? They just ate up 2 ministers with negotiated resignations. And you're going to go there? I thought you had better sense than that, Paul. But I had consulted the history of the congregation. Gerald Weary was here 13 years as senior minister. Harold Hadley, 17, right? David Osborne, 14. I said, well, there's a good chance that maybe they have a tradition of longevity ministry. And of course, that was a tumultuous period when you're moving from an old place to a new place and all sorts of changes, disruptive to ministry. I think I'll take a chance. And I'm glad I did. It's been great. And for my reminiscence, and I hope you'll let me reminisce with you a little bit this morning, I want to use as a template the areas for visioning that were developed in the congregation. Jennifer had come a few months before me, and Barry was well ensconced here, and we were part of that process of visioning for what our future would be. And it really took about 3 years to get this whole thing fleshed out. But it was determined that we wanted to be larger, that we wanted to have greater diversity, that we wanted greater spiritual grounding, stronger fellowship. We wanted to be evidencing a greater commitment to our surrounding community, and we wanted to use our resources creatively. So this is a template that I've had in my mind, and I'm sure Jennifer has, as we've planned our ministry here, and since Natalie has joined us as well, that this has been the template. And I just want to share the ways we've been successful, and sometimes not successful, in recognizing and following this vision. In terms of the plan, it called, and I think one reason it took a while to get consensus was calling for additional program staff. Someone to join us to work with youth and young adults, someone to be a social justice coordinator, and someone to be a membership and volunteer coordinator. And, to add 3 staff, it took a lot of talk, a lot of consensus building, but I think it's really helped us in meeting this vision. In terms of larger, I think some people, that was a matter of conflict in the committee. Do we really want to be a lot much larger? But if we do all these other things, we'll grow naturally. Well, we have grown, not by leaps and bounds, but if we use the same metrics of measurement, membership meaning the same thing, we went from 614 in 2002 to what I reckon to be 703 currently. And there's more, of course, folks coming online now when your membership kicks in after 2 months who joined us this morning. So we have grown in an era when the denomination countrywide has diminished somewhat, and where Unitarian Universalism on Long Island and New York, in many cases, has declined significantly. There's only one other congregation that grew at all during this time, other than us, and many of them declined as much as 25%. So we really need this juiced up PR program that we're going to have, not only for our congregation, but for wider Unitarian Universalism on Long Island. And our membership volunteer coordinator has helped, increased advertising has helped. Ben Borton has helped us in attracting and orienting and involving new members in the congregation, working with our member resources committee and so forth. So we've made some progress there. In terms of diversity, the 3 areas that were mentioned were youth and young adults, and then also GLBT, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender folks, and singles. And we made gains in all of those areas. Pleased that India Harris is now our youth and young adult coordinator. In terms of singles, Lillian Strassman started a wonderful group that sometimes we had, 70, 80 people, Lillian? And, or more? Where's Lillian? Oh, you're back there. Or aren't you up in the choir? My goodness. And then she relinquished for a while. We had a hiatus. Ben Borton got the groups started again, and it flourished. Then there was a hiatus, and Lillian has taken it over again. So we've had a ministry to singles and also to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual community. Our interweave group has become, I think, so interwoven within the congregation. They're not a separate group. They're an adjunct to our social justice committee, but we've proclaimed ourselves as a welcoming congregation, and I'm so proud of that. In terms of spiritual grounding, they suggested, well, let's have some different sort of worship opportunities. So we developed a Soulful Sundown. Second Friday of the month during the congregational year, started with a meal and then worship and then programming, which has become a coffee house, which Jennifer has led so brilliantly for the last few years. That has been very, very, very important in new ways of worship. I decided, well, I'm going to start an Easter sunrise service down by the pond, and I thought, how many people are going to join me? Well, there's been someone there every year, and this last Easter, in a 41-degree weather, 24 people joined me for Easter sunrise service and for worship. But, and then I think of our lifespan religious education program, currently overseen by Natalie, and all the ways we have tried to help people develop their spiritual lives, particularly as it relates to Unitarian Universalism. And Oscar currently doing Building Your Own Theology. I have often done Unitarian Universalist history and identity. And this has been one of my prime areas of interest and joy, being your minister here. Having a film series in the fall of current films that relate to religious spiritual themes. Also, of course, doing, well, something like Oscar and I did a few weeks ago, a colloquy on process theology, where we went back and forth as to the meaning of this tradition within Unitarian Universalism. God is not being all-powerful, but God is being that lure to greater intensity of meaning and purpose. I could go on and on. The meditation group that was over at the Ignatian Retreat Center, they asked me when that was closing down, can we come over to your place? And I said, well, call Tammy. She does the outside groups, and we've got them here now with providing opportunities for our members as well. And then Stronger Fellowship. We decided to have UU Cafe every Sunday after our service. Do you realize what a commitment that is? We've had folks there every Sunday, and Carla Dresner has overseen it for many years. You know, when I tell ministers from other congregations, they can hardly believe. You do that every Sunday? We do it every Sunday. So people can count on that for stronger fellowship with their friends. And you know, another simple thing, we said, well, how about if we just put out some bagels and coffee and tea before the service? And you know what happened? People started to come. Provide the bagels and they will come. You know, this morning I counted 20 people there. That was before the fire drill. Not really a drill, but the fire exigency. And, but simple things like that. The growth of our Memorial Day retreat program up at Silver Bay. I talked to Paul Dresden this past week, and he said we have currently 244 registrants, the highest ever. Isn't that something? But all the ways, you know, the RE committee said, well, what can we do? Well, one of the things they did, they said, well, let's have a second picnic after the Bridging Sunday, which has been held for many years. So everyone was encouraged to think of ways to promote greater fellowship. I appreciate the affinity groups that Ben Borton has started, the Bridge Group, the Expedition Group, the Lunch Bunch Group, and many other things that have come up along the way to increase fellowship among our members. And then in terms of being committed to the community, what a wonderful ministry we've had to the wider community. You know, early on, it was my suggestion to the Social Justice Committee, you have all these different very valid interests and concerns. How about if we unify about over one thing, not to disregard all the others, but give some real emphasis to one area. And we chose affordable housing, which is, you know, a real dire need on Long Island. And I am still so impressed at the hard work that people put in on this issue. We left no stone unturned. Well, we got involved with Habitat for Humanity. We worked on 2 houses. And I was so proud for the first house that we were listed as the greatest contributor on the sign outside that house. We contributed $22,000 of our own money, not from our endowment, not from our royalties, but from our own pockets to be the highest contributor to that Habitat for Humanity house. I was so proud. My first ever installing sheetrock. Some people laughed. But we had someone covering up all our mistakes. Someone with, you know, the skill of Colin Woodhouse over there. But that was a wonderful experience. We worked tirelessly to pass the workhouse housing bill in the state legislature, where it had languished for many, many years, which called for a set-aside of affordable housing on every new project, a housing project on Long Island. And that passed. We lobbied our legislators, we sent letters, we collected signatures, and that passed. Another thing we said, well, let's join Family Promise. This was something that had been very successful in Princeton, where I had come from, where, because it's so hard to have a dedicated space for homeless families, that they were housed temporarily, week by week, with different congregations. And our congregation helped up the Episcopal Church. We couldn't do it at our church because of our commitments to the nursery school and our other renters, but we helped them, and it was a very successful program. So when I heard it was coming to Long Island, I had so many folks take me up from this congregation, joining that effort. And Claire DeRoche, our social justice coordinator, who we hired, was so active in that group and getting it started. We did all the work. We even bought a van. We hired a social worker. We prepared our beach house to be one of the congregations of the 12 to take the first family. And we got the first family here for the first week. But you know what happened? We didn't get the clientele. It just did not fly on Long Island. Now, sometimes, despite your greatest efforts, something isn't successful. And am I unhappy that we tried it? No. Number one, we established connections with many, many other congregations in a common effort, and that was enriching in itself. The other thing we attempted was accessory apartments like they have in Huntington, where non-related people can live in a private residence. There are very strong, laws against that. But if with a separate entrance, with a small square footage, limiting the number of people that could be in the apartment, with offering enough off-street parking to deal with all the concerns. We actually had a mini grant through our VEACH program that helped the township of North Hempstead to draw up all the regulations. I spoke before the town council on the issue. We had 21 housing and social service and social action agencies from the island meeting here, and we talked John Kamen, the supervisor of the township, into doing this, to bringing it up to the council, which he did in July. We got it. What a wonderful victory, until folks came back from their vacations and all hell broke loose in North Hempstead, demanding that this be rescinded. And there was to be this public hearing at New Hyde Park High School. And so we came, and we were going to testify that this should be retained. However, they started the meeting, which was attended by over 1,000 people, out for blood, that this had been changed, and I was all prepared to speak. Several people from the congregation, no, there's no use, because they announced right at the beginning that they were going to rescind the law. What a disappointment. What a disappointment. Was I unhappy we did it? Kinda. But it gave us a center focus. We educated ourselves about the housing issue, and I think it had an impact in terms of the people knowing our congregation, at least from the phone calls, disgruntled phone calls I got. When I got there, someone told me, thinking I was part of the opposition, that Unitarian Universalist church is sending over 10 school buses full of people. That's why we got our housing association to get all these people here tonight. So it did get us some notoriety. But think of what we've done in terms of adult literacy. Literacy Nassau holding their training schedules here. And at least 15 of our members have completed the training and been involved in adult literacy work. The Superstorm Sandy relief we did. It's amazing when you think that for 5 Saturdays we had groups down in Long Beach handing out clothing and food. We helped to rehab 3 houses. We spent one Saturday, a whole crew of us, helping to clean up the waterfront down in Long Beach. All the work we've done for veterans and supporting Beacon House through our large grants program, for making meals for them, for helping out in so many ways. And the community groups through our large grants program, through mental health issues and domestic violence, and training of police to deal with those suffering from mental illness. The work we did on providing legal help for immigration legal help for unaccompanied minors who came during that crisis from Central America. We supported 5 groups which have represented these kids in immigration court. I could go on and on. I've got to abridge this a little bit. But I wanted to mention Jobs with Justice and what a great organization that has been to work with. And I've told maybe before how the director said, we're having this rally because the management is going to cut health benefits for janitors. Could you come out and support us? Well, our congregation supports through our VEACH program, Jobs with Justice. So I went out, he said, I want you to wear a clerical collar. I had never worn a clerical collar in my life before. So I went to the Catholic Supply House and I got a clerical collar. And so I went, and the local head of the AFL-CIO was really giving it to this management, using very florid language, to say the least. The minute he saw me, he said, "Oh, excuse the language, Father," And later, Bob Adams, who was with me, we were said, would you two come with us to confront directly the management, to come up to the front door? So we went up there along with some others, And boy, did they give a stream of invective. You wouldn't believe, what do you blankety blank, blank, blank. Oh, God bless you, Father. The power of the collar had been a new experience for me. But, they did not lose their health benefits. And we demonstrated outside of we demonstrated out of Roosevelt Field Mall because the janitors in the food court were being paid so much with less benefits than the janitors in the rest of the facility, which was grossly unfair. So we kept, good old Bert Napier. He'd round us up, we'd go down there, and you know what happened? Simon Property said, you pay the same thing to those janitors in the food court, and we won that one as well. Folks, one of the things, this kind of goes with the use of our resources as well. We said we have so many resources in the Beach House and other meeting spaces. Let's open them up more aggressively to other nonprofits, which we have. And the last fiscal year we had 31 different outside groups from the community using our facility for a total of 501 meetings. 501 meetings. Last year we had nearly 3,000 meetings on the calendar in our congregation. Now, some people say that's way, way too much. I say bring more on. Even if we have to hire a few more staff to handle it, because it means we're having a wider impact on the community. And every time we get someone to come up that long driveway, they're acquainted with us. They sometimes pick up our literature. They see on the bulletin board what's going on. And I remember one night I came here to introduce a program by Shelter Rock Forum, and I could hardly find a parking place. I think someone had started to park in the ministers' places and everything. I looked on the calendar and we had 19 events here that evening. 19. It also coincided with the League of Women Voters having their candidate night here. And so I really like to see when the joint is hopping. I'll tell you, I love that. I love that. But I have to thank our social justice coordinator for all of her work. Of course, she's been recognized recently by several groups for her faithfulness and her effectiveness. The last one was using our resources creatively. Now, I want to say a bit about our resources. They're unbelievable. The last I checked, the corpus of our endowment was between $360 and $380 million. We're going to get at least, I suppose, around $10 million in gas royalties this year from Germany. I don't know of another congregation similarly blessed. Now, I've tried to find out. I remember one time I was in an elevator with the rector of Trinity Church on Wall Street. And I gingerly kind of had a suggestion, well, I'll tell you ours if you tell me yours. But what would you say your net worth is, And I don't know how I thought he was going to tell me first, but he bumbled around, well, it's kind of hard to tell because so much of our investments in real estate, they go up and down, so I really couldn't tell you. So I never learned. But that's the only similarly wealthy, rich congregation, as much as we are, that I know of. If you know of others, and any way I can find out facts and figures, I'd be glad to find out. But what are we doing to use this creatively? Of course, our beach budget to support social justice and social change work is $12.3 million this year. Some people say, well, boy, we might have to cut if the royalties go down, which they may, and the stock market doesn't do as good. We might have to cut beach to $10 or $11 million. Isn't that terrible? What other congregation in the country could support social justice in that way? What other one? Now, I'm not saying that as an accomplished fact, and I'll be long gone before you have to make those decisions, but let's keep things in perspective, shall we, folks? Let's keep it in perspective. Now, another thing that we wanted to do more effectively was socially responsible investing. Do you know that we never were even voting our proxies and according with our values before 2002? And so we got together to do that with a service that helps us to do that. And we were not an effective member of the Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility. Here again, I have to thank Claire. She has become active with that group, with many other religious groups, in holding corporations responsible. Her particular area has been the leader of the group that's been negotiating with Hormel about curtailing the degree of their use of antibiotics. And last fall, or the fall before last, Claire came into my office. She said, how would you like to go to Austin, Minnesota on January 15th or whatever? And I said, how about Orlando? No, she said, we've come up against a brick wall with Hormel. We want to go to their annual meeting. We had bought stock in Hormel, so we could appear at their annual meeting and to present our case. And I said, well, I'm in. And we got Nancy Baldwin, the current president, to go along with us. So we all were going to speak at this annual meeting, and which Dick tells me the stock was 45% owned by people in Austin, right? And we thought we were going to be run out of a town on a rail, but we all made effective, I think, speeches, and were politely received. But what was going to happen? Well, a few months later, they announced they had bought an antibiotic-free meat company, Applegate Farms, right? and Claire tells me there's been a dramatic change in their willingness to try some other things except loading on the antibiotics in their own research farms, their own production farms. And I'm so pleased. Now, I don't know if we can claim 100% effectiveness, but we were there, and we did it. And I'm so pleased we did. You know, the question was made, well, why don't we have a solar array to take advantage, use our resources in that way? And we did it after a good deal of deliberation. We did it, which has affected our energy use, along with many, many other energy-saving things. Thanks in large part to the urging of our Green Sanctuary Committee. Thank you, Green Sanctuary. Thank you. You know, we became an official Green Sanctuary Committee, and they've done so much good work with us here. One of the things was suggestion for a community garden. We have this on our property. Why don't we take advantage of it? And so many people have gardens up there, organic gardens. I can mention our large grants program, which has distributed 100,000 grants, and crisis grants have much more. I can't recount them all for you. But it was when I came here, there was an element of controversy because so many people felt we should be doing things outside of the catchment area of VEACH grants, which are social change, and not any bricks or mortar, not any direct service. And so we opened up this avenue. So we were able to support our partner church to help them build a church in Romania, and many of us were there for that dedication. And many other things. And it was all democratically begun by putting our suggestions on a board in the social hall down in the outer ring wing. And they were gathered up, and then we made choices as a congregation. Now, this all started because we had a windfall of $34 million in royalties one year, which were much above our stewardship level. But we voted again to at least continue this program for 3 more years. I could speak about the Katrina relief when our intergenerational group went down to help with the relief there. A group from our congregation that went down and actually built a house for a woman in 1 week. I can talk about how we have taken a stand against torture. When the UUA passed the action of witness against that, we modified it and passed a congregational resolution on it, which we distributed to all of the politicians from Long Island. And you know, the Long Island Council, the churches endorsed that position. They sent it out to all their congregations and all the other religious groups that are connected with them. You know, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, the Jewish folks, the Muslims. And when President Obama was elected, we were down at Congressman Ackerman's office saying, Congressman, we want you to be spearhead the effort to get Barack Obama to keep his promise to abolish torture. And of course, there were great changes in torture. And then went on to solitary confinement as an issue of torture. And we've been a leader in this area of going to Albany and lobbying for a bill to halt solitary confinement for more than 15 days, because that has been declared by the UN as a form of torture. I can think of our denominational support, our leadership training day we provided every year, which Jennifer has been so active in for our Metro District. I can think of Long Island Leadership Institute, which we've been involved in. I can think of the fact that this congregation hosted the 2014 meeting of the International Council of Unitarian Universalists. What an effort! What an effort! 125 people, Richard, right? From over 25 countries, making all those meals and all of the conference, planning. Now, one of the things of using our resources that I'm disappointed about is that we wanted to do some more investigation of the use of the Beach House as a conference center and how that might be. And we had 3 proposals from professionals as how to do this, and the board voted down any further action on that. I suggest you might want to consider that again, how we might do that. I'm glad when we have the youth cons here and fill up that building and serve our denomination in that way. So I want us to celebrate what we've done. Sometimes I actually have heard, oh, well, we really haven't done that much. Baloney. We have done a lot we can be proud of. And I have heard it actually said that this congregation never follows through on its long-range visioning plan. Balderdash. In all of these 6 areas, we have made significant progress that we can be proud of. So never sell yourself short in this congregation. Now, another thing I'm very pleased about was the passing of our congregational covenant. I want you to take out the blue insert, which has our covenant on it. Now, when I came here, I'm imbued with Minnesota nice. And I was somewhat taken back by the harsh language that we used in some of our committee meetings and our congregational meetings. And I had never really seen this before, of people publicly criticized in a congregational meeting, not taking their stand on or taking issue with their stand, but personal attacks. Folks, we cannot have this in the beloved community, and we're getting better on it. I was the recipient of at least 4 of these in public, where people had never talked to me previously before bringing me to the woodshed in public. That should not be. That should not be. Please, don't ever do that. Because it brings into the body politic, into our congregation, into our beloved community, fear. Boy, is someone going to call me to account on the floor of the congregational meeting? No, we can discuss our differences without discussing personalities, without raising our voices. You know, because you raise your voice, well, maybe in a sermon, when you're exhorting people, but raise your voice in disgust or anger at someone, no. And so we've worked on this covenant because so many people have been hurt by harsh language and intemperate language. But this is a covenant which took many years to agree to, but accepting, respecting, and celebrating differences among us. Always remembering the golden rule. Now, I want you to go down to expressing thoughts and feelings directly and speaking honestly with kindness, keeping an open mind and listening deeply, balancing our need to be heard with an obligation to listen, assuming good intentions in all interactions. And then the second paragraph from the bottom. If you are in conflict with someone, go to that person directly. Seek the assistance of a minister and or the committee on ministry, rather than spreading your feeling about someone else to other people in triangulation. Now, I did a sermon a while back on triangles are forever. Who hasn't done it? If someone would raise their hand and say they've never triangulated against someone else, rather than speaking directly with someone they were at odds with, I would say they aren't quite with it. Because it's so natural to relieve anxiety in that way, by getting other people on our side, or by discussing our disgruntlement. But you know what that does to a congregation? It eats away at self-confidence. It creates discord. People should, when they're at odds, talk directly. Get the help of a minister. Now, our Committee on Ministry, jointly appointed by the ministers and the Board of Trustees, has gotten training on mediation. It's not an arbitration process where judgment is made. It's bringing people together so that they can try to resolve their differences. And many times this has worked. I want to commend the Committee on Ministry for what they've done. Sometimes conflict may not be able to resolve. If it can't be, though, our covenant says we are going to withdraw from the conflict. We're not going to spread our animus among other people in the congregation if we're not willing to take these steps for dealing with it. Does that sound good to you? Does it? One of my hopes for your future is that that will be the case. That will be the case. Because when there's that discord, and we've had some doozies here, that undermines, and people feel that when they come into a congregation. The feeling tone of the congregation is hurt. People aren't going to be as welcome, feel as welcome, and they don't want to come into a conflict. There's enough areas of conflict in their life. Now I want to leave you with one other concern I've had. So often, leaders of the congregation refer to this congregation as a lay-led. We are lay-led. And I've often thought, well, what am I, chopped liver? No, you call a minister to provide leadership. Now, our bylaws make this great division between the ministers as the spiritual leaders of the congregation and the lay leaders as the temporal leaders of the congregation. My folks, you can't so easily divide those two. They're intermixed in so many ways. How we spend our resources is a temporal and a spiritual issue. How we treat our employees is a spiritual as well as a temporal issue. I would hope that you would change that phrase, lay leadership, to we have strong lay leadership and strong ministerial leadership working together in this congregation. Does that sound good? Does that sound good? And I would hope our board and membership committee would revise their policy now of only allowing people to sign the book if they go to 4 designated or 3 or 4 designated orientation sessions. In our world today, it's very, very difficult for people to do that. Now, we can get many different schemes for orientation, but when you tie it into a particular, we would have, in my estimate, 15 to 20 more members now if we had a more gracious policy. You know, I agree with the late Forrest Church, and I discussed this with him. He was one of the most successful ministers of building membership, I think, in 20th century Unitarianism, and also in New York. He said the trick is not to set up barriers for people for membership, but it's to get them in, and maybe even love bomb them then, but get them involved. And if they don't come for a Sunday, call them again. Get them into a fellowship circle. Have continual orientations to what Unitarian Universalism means. But don't set up barriers that somehow, if you can make it through these orientation sessions, you're worthy of being part of us. I don't think that's right. And I hope that I know this is very controversial, but I would like to hear and see facts and figures that I'm wrong. Now, I want to say that all of these efforts and all that I've been involved in are to help us to grow spiritually. Now, that's a very nebulous word. What does spirituality mean? You know, I was named after St. Paul by my father, who was a Pauline scholar, as probably Dick's father was. You could look in his Bible, and those Pauline epistles were all black because of all the preaching and studying he did. Now, as a Unitarian Universalist, there's much I don't agree with in St. Paul. I agree with the general comment that he took the religion of Jesus into a religion about Jesus in order to meet the needs and expectations of the Greco-Roman world. But you know, he had some good practical ideas for saying what these words mean. 1 Corinthians 13 on love is a wonderful definition we can all benefit from. But then there's the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians 5. Fruits of the Spirit is not only going off in ecstasy, speaking in tongues, or having mystical visions. It's love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, moderation. I have spoken on all of them many, many times. And it's my hope that you're a more spiritual people in terms of this definition than you were when you joined. That's my fervent hope. And as so many times I've shared with you my favorite stories from my favorite preacher, Fred Craddock. Wonderful preacher. Just a couple weeks ago, I came into possession of another one of his sermons on a CD, and I just hungrily got it to listen to it. But he tells a story about when he was a young boy. His family was so poor, that they could not go to church. They were in rural Tennessee. They were far away from churches. And so every Saturday night, his mother would have all the kids take their baths, and then they'd dress up, and they'd go to the living room, sit on the floor, and they'd sing the hymns of the faith, Standing on the Promises, Amazing Grace, etc. And he would say to his mom, Mama, why are we doing this? And she says, we're practicing, because someday you'll be able to go to a church. Someday God will make it possible. You know, they had an elderly African-American couple as neighbors, and the husband's name was Will, and they would come over and they'd sit on the floor with him and sing these hymns in their practicing worship sessions. And one night Fred turned to Will and he said, Will, have you ever been in a church? Will said, hundreds of times. Boy, I hope you get the chance sometime to go to a church. He said, you know, it doesn't look like much when you see it up on blocks, you know, in a white clapboard building. But once you get inside, you will be amazed. The whole sermon was about hyperbole and sermonizing in religion. He said, when you get in, you'll see a blue sky with stars twinkling. And it's as if you hear angel voices. Doesn't look like much from outside, but once you get inside, Fred, you'll be amazed. Well, Will died. And somehow they were able to get transportation to Will's funeral in one of those white clapboard churches up on cinder blocks. And when he went in so expectantly, he didn't see any blue ceiling. He didn't see any stars. He said to himself, oh, Will, you steered me wrong on this one. But then the choir began to hum. And then they began to sing. And the preacher began to preach. And he looked up, and the ceiling was blue. And the stars were shining. And the angels were singing. Folks, I have seen the blue sky and the stars. I've heard the angels singing in this very room. I hope you have heard it. And I hope you will continue to. I'll miss you so much. Amen. Thank you so much, and thank you for that fine party last night. In terms of our future, I'll be doing some work with the denomination in legacy giving, estate planning giving, and I'll have an announcement for you shortly about another possibility that's will likely come to pass. Let's join together in singing our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment, number 1028 in our teal hymnal. The stories of our living brings us from grace and flame. Now we feel the witness, the life of liberty. With a heart of commitment, there's a life that's full of grace. In our hunger and our passion, to follow. The blessings of truth be upon us. The power of love direct us and sustain us. And may we see the stars and hear the angel voices and abide in peace until we meet again. Amen.